It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew version 1.0 decklist of the commander in front of us on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out those links in the description below. But today, we are starting Tarkir Dragonstorm, and I'm really excited. Tarkir is a plane that I really love. It was one of the first planes I ever was involved with in Magic, and I have so much love for the clans and the mechanics of Tarkir. So today, to start off pre-con week, to talk through all of our commanders, every day this week, we're having an Millsy Brews episode and a $50 pre-con upgrade. You'll see that up on the channel as soon as this video goes live for you to check out. But we're starting off with the Abzan clan, led by Felothar, the Steadfast. A 4-mana Abzan human warrior 0/5. It says each creature we control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Creatures we control can attack us if they didn't have defender. We can pay 3, tap Felothar, and sacrifice another creature to draw cards equal to that sacrificed creature's toughness, and then discard cards equal to its power. Toughness matters commanders are always very interesting. I think in this color combination, our most popular example before Felothar was Doran, and Doran basically just had the first part of that text box, allowing you to assign toughness rather than power, and that was really great because a lot of the tree folk, right, have big toughness matters style cards, and that was great. But I think the one thing that Felothar does extremely well is takes kind of why you'd want to play something like Arcades the Strategist, who we're going to cover later in the content cycle, and straps on this ability to sacrifice creatures to draw cards. And this is really interesting to me because I think it really plays into Black's prowess to get things back out of the graveyard, which is something we're going to talk about. So all in all, our goal is to play creatures with and without defender to allow them to basically rule combat with their toughness and then try to use that toughness to our advantage as we push towards attacking our opponents. I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos early for just $1 a month, check it out below the video. But all right, what do we have that has access to big toughness? It could be very easy just to take Felothar and dump every defender there is, go walls like you would with Arcades, and just call it a day. But I think the easy thing to remember is that Felothar is letting all of our creatures, right, deal damage equal to their toughness, meaning big toughness creatures matter, especially if their toughness is higher than their power, right? The whole goal of the deck. Not only that, but anything that's a 0/whatever just gets better. So you'll see here in these creatures, we do have some that got their reprints in the precon, but there are some that don't, or some from the main set. One of the first creatures that came to mind for me was a creature like Angel of Destiny. The Baitor that's in the deck, the alternate commander, cares a little bit about lifelink, but Angel of Destiny is a really interesting creature. So whenever a creature we control deals damage to a player, us and that player gain that much life. And at the beginning of our end step, if we have at least 15 more life than our starting life total, and Angel of Destiny, attacked this turn, each player that did attack that turn loses the game. This is really interesting alternate win con. I think it's more fun when you realize that Angel of Destiny now becomes effectively a 6/6 with double strike in the air, leading to probably it helping us end the game a little bit quicker that way. Baldin got another great reprint. During our turn, each creature assigns combat damage equal to toughness rather than its power. We have a couple of these in the deck, just making sure that whether or not Felothar's out, we can always keep this ability around. And it says whenever Baldin attacks up to 100 target creatures, each get +X/+O, where X is the number of cards in our hand. So this is basically just going to soup all of our creatures up, right? Hopefully bringing them from their 5 or 6 toughness to maybe 10 or greater, and we can pair this with some of the trample effects we'll talk about later in the video. We're bringing the Baitor in from the main set, 5/7 for 5 with flying. This is the beginning of your end step. If creatures we control have total toughness 10 or greater, we draw a card. If it's 20 or greater, we untap each creature we control, and if it's 40 or greater, each opponent loses half of their life rounded up. This is a really fun effect, and it's probably going to be fairly easy to get 40, especially with all these big toughness creatures we're trying to prioritize over some of the smaller walls that maybe have value in the deck. And I think that's where I'm hoping this new Baitor can come in and give us value for us. Consuming Blob may look odd, but But I think it seems like a fun one here. So its power is equal to the number of card types among cards in our graveyard, and the toughness equal to that number plus 1. And then at the end of our end step, we get to just make a copy of it. I really like this ability because it's going to kind of really double itself. It's going to keep growing every turn, right? Giving us more of these oozes. It may not be as probably good in slot as some of the other creatures in the deck, but I think we still want to have some fun. Crystal Barricade feels like a great add here, being one of our wall defenders, but it gives us hexproof and prevents all non-combat damage to be dealt to other creatures you control. This is really nice to just help protect our board from those damage-based board wipes and things like that, just to keep us alive and in the game. Daxos says whenever another creature we control enters or dies, we gain a life, and his toughness equal to our devotion to white. I wanted to add a couple cards that cared about life gain, because like I said, that alternate commander from the deck, Beitor, cares about life gain, and is still another great asset in the deck. So Daxos is great because it's going to gain us some incremental life and can get big, right, the more creatures we have on the board. Essence of Antiquity is a perfect example of a creature that is probably not super great in some decks, but is really great here. Same thing with the Dominal Ancients over on the right. It is a 1/10 for 5 mana. We can play it face down with its Disguise and flip it up at any time for 3 mana, and if we do, all of our creatures get hexproof until end of turn and we untap them. This is a really nice way to untap our creatures if we need to, but the truth is, now you just have a 5 mana, effectively 10/10, right? It's going to become a real threat to our opponent. Same thing with the Indomitable Ancients there on the right. You're talking about a 4 mana 2/10, which is effectively a 10/10, and we can hopefully get some extra abilities so it can really hit hard. Fukun Greenshell was a card that I was excited to throw in here, mainly for its second ability. Whenever it or another creature with toughness greater than its power enters, you get to look at the top card. If it's a land, we get it tapped. Otherwise, we put it in our hand. And then as soon as you hit 10 lands, all your creatures get +2/+2. I mean, that +2/+2 can be the huge difference between, dealing really important damage to our opponents or not, right? Especially when you start getting some of these 5 and 6 toughness creatures up to 8s, right? And 7s and 8s, where they're going to start just dealing big damage. And then you get these big creatures up even higher. Runic Armor is a 2/5 that says whenever an opponent activates an ability of a creature or land that isn't a mana ability, you draw a card. It's a very, I'd say, niche trigger, but it's going to be helpful, I think, over the course of a ton of games in drawing cards here and there. And of course, we got to play the trees. Tree Redemption came in the precon, exchanging our life total with this creature's toughness. And then, of course, we had to throw Tree of Perdition in here to exile target opponent's life total with this creature's toughness. This could be a really fun combo with Felothar. If you wanted to take Tree of Perditions and Toughness and exchange it with somebody's life total, let's say they're at 30, and then sack Tree of Perdition to draw 30. I mean, it is a thing you could do, but really you use Tree of Perdition, right, to take somebody's life total and get them down to help better focus them down. Trostani kind of up the same vein of Daxos, is trying to just help gain us some life, keep us involved. Whenever another creature comes in, we gain life equal to that creature's toughness. I just love the idea of this. Since we're playing high toughness creatures, it means we're going to be hopefully gaining some life, right, over the course of the turns as Trostani's out. And then if we can make tokens at all, Trostani can populate them to get more of them. And then a couple of the classic walls you'd expect, Blossoms and Omens, both just draw a card when they come in. Classic 2 mana 0/4 walls, they're going to be effectively 4/4s, and they're going to do good work for us. But I think where we take the deck and, like I said, make it better, it's making sure our creatures can always hit hard. That's why we're using things like Bedrock Tortoise and that Doran that we talked about to make sure we're always hitting equal to our toughness, so that someone can't just remove Felothar from our board and then our board's done, right? We have ways to kind of make sure that they can do that. Arbor Adherent is a fun new card from the precon, kind of becomes a nice mana dork, tapping for X mana, where X is the greatest toughness among other creatures you control, just making sure we can add a ton of mana each turn. Icarus Shadiki got that great reprint with new art. Whenever a creature we control does combat damage to a player, we gain life equal to that creature's toughness. Great way, again, to make sure life's pouring back in, keeping ourselves alive as we're trying to be the aggressor. McCready can give Skulk, an ability that allows creatures not to be blocked by creatures with a greater power to creatures we control with power 2 or less. Hopefully that'll help some of our walls and some of our mid-range creatures not be blockable, which is pretty cool. Sidar Kondo says that creatures our opponents control without flying or reach can't block creatures with power 2 or less. Kind of another fun way to get some of those creatures to be a little bit less blockable, right? Make sure we can try to get ourselves in for some more damage. Then, I think that the deck, just like Arcades, excels so well at is really one-sided removal. Things like Dusk, which destroys all creatures with power 3 or greater, and Expel the Interlopers, where you choose a number between 0 and 10, destroy all creatures with power greater than or equal to the chosen number. Again, most of our creatures are sitting low on the power scale, meaning that these board wipes should be able to take out all of our opponent's really big creatures and keep all of ours intact. Yes, some of our big toughest creatures are 4 or 5 power, but most of them sit underneath that, and so these will still be mostly one-sided board wipes. We have something like Meekstone. Creatures of power 3 or greater don't untap during the controller's untap steps. This is mainly helped to just punish our opponents for their big creatures needing to attack in order to have their game plans or things like that, as hopefully our creatures just get to untap again and again for what we want to do. Rammus Ekor feels pretty cool. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, we get a wall token with Defender. Again, more creatures with Defender and Toughness that can attack. And then beginning of combat on our turn, creatures we control with Defender get Exalted. So whenever a creature we control attacks alone, it gets +1/+1 for each instance of Exalted among permanents you control. This is just there as a way to, I would say, incentivize. If you have an opponent that maybe is wider open or one of your walls could get into, you could choose not to attack with the rest and get in for some big damage. I think that's a nice option. We're backing up Felothar again with Assault Formation, very similar to Felothar's abilities, having everybody assign damage equal to the toughness. The green can allow a defender to attack as though it didn't have the defender. But the one thing Assault Formation is very good for, especially if we have a ton of open mana, is creatures get +1 until end of turn for 3 mana. So the more mana we have, the bigger that buff we can pass out to all of our defensive creatures. And then Sight of the Scale Lords at the beginning of combat on our turn. Creatures we control of toughness 4 or greater get +2/+2 in vigilance till end turn, just allowing them to take even bigger attacks because of their toughness, get in for some big damage, and then be able to still block as well. Cards here, I just wasn't really sure where to put them, but I think they're relevant. The first is things like Orin Frostfang or Sereth. These are creatures that are going to give our creatures Death Touch, meaning that hopefully no matter what blocks it, it's dying. If they're going to try to double or triple block, we can hopefully negatively affect them for that. But I think the important part here is once we get Trample on them, Death Touch plus Trample is such a nice combination. Frostfang adds some added value by allowing you to draw cards whenever a creature we control hits a player. Sereth gives us the upside of giving all of our untapped creatures, except it, hexproof, meaning that as they're untapped, they're going to be at least a little bit protected. Zopentral has that classic green ability at the beginning of your combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control. We love to see it, especially on a thing that has higher toughness than power, and can definitely make all of our creatures better. Of course, great for those creatures that are 0-4s or 0-5s, because then they're becoming 0-10s, and dealing even more damage. Brave the Sands can give us vigilance and allow our creatures to block an additional creature each combat. This is a really fun ability, especially when we're dealing damage equal to our toughness, meaning that we're going to be making sure that we're blocking multiple creatures and actually killing them. And then Garruk's Uprising and Primal Rage for Trample, making sure that then we can hit over the top with our big creatures. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at Felothar, and I think there's a lot to learn in testing, which is, one, do we have enough recursion? Felothar wants to sacrifice creatures to go to the graveyard, to draw cards, and I think I have enough. I have some recursion in the deck, but do we need more? Things like targeted recursion, like Victimize. We are playing things like Reanimate in the deck, but do we need more? Do we need more every turn reanimation with something like Smile at Death, one of the new cards from the new set that lets you get up to 2 target creatures with power 2 or less from our graveyard back to the battlefield at the beginning of our upkeep. I like this as an ability to be sacrificing these walls and getting them back. I just wasn't sure how much Smile at Death would really matter in an average game, considering some of our defensively creatures are a little bit above 2 power. And then, do we want to look at honing in a few more of our high toughness creatures for something like Oathsworn Giant? This is a 6 mana 3/4 that gives all of our other creatures +0/+2 in vigilance. I like Oathsworn Giant. It was just a little more mana expensive than some of the other creatures I was looking to play, and I just wanted to see how they would operate before we go for something like that. But let's do what we love to do most on the channel and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal on the channel for playtest is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to determine our best plays, but it's to start getting ourselves into some game scenarios with our deck and understanding how do we set up our board and how do we work towards setting up our game plan. Here we're keeping a 4-lander with Rampart Architect, one of the new cards, comes in and makes a wall. And then whenever a creature we control with Defender dies, we can go get a basic land and put it in tap. We have Primal Rage for that trample, and then Bedrock Tortoise, right, as another copy of Felothar's first ability. The other, of course, thing that's nice about Bedrock Tortoise that I forgot to mention is it does give creatures hexproof during our turn, which I think is going to end up being helpful in the long run. I think we're probably just good to play the Canopy Vista here. I mean, there's nothing we're doing turn 1 that's going to do us any good, right? Turn 2, I mean, I think Primal Rage is really our best bet. The really nice part is this and this are going to start coming in. This gets turned on by the Canopy Vista. This gets turned on by the Canopy Vista. This Shattered Sanctum is going to be good. So our land base is great. I think we can just keep moving our way, and we'll get that Primal Rage down just to start getting that ability there. Now here, Runic Armasaur is not a bad draw. I mean, we really don't have anything for 3, and it could potentially draw us a card, right? Get the Verge down, play the Armasaur. Right now, we potentially could get a card draw coming back to our turn. I doubt it, but it is a possibility. And then we play Felothar for 4 mana here. Now Runic Armasaur can attack. It's a 5/5 with trample. It can potentially deal some damage this turn, right? This is kind of exactly where we want to be with our deck. Get a trample enabler and start getting in for damage. Turn 5 here, I guess there's a real decision here between Tree of Perdition and Rampant Architect. I think I like the Perdition better. We're basically telling our opponents, hey, you need to get rid of the Perdition, right? Because if I untap with it, I really get to take advantage, right, of somebody's I get to really take advantage of somebody's life total. But I think it makes the most sense. And then attack with Felothar and Runic Armasaur this turn. Again, get some more damage in. Maybe try to start setting up who we want to Perdition. My thought here is have Felothar and Runic Armasaur start attacking one person, plan to Perdition somebody else, right? So we can get it to be an 0-40, right? Or as close to that as possible. And then as we come into turn 6, I think I like the Bedrock Tortoise now. Just a little bit better protect creatures on our turn. Tap the Tree of Perdition to flip. And then we can either try to knock out the person that we tried to flip the life total for, hopefully deal this 10 to them. Otherwise, just keep dealing damage around as we're wearing our opponents down and look to maybe try to finish it more next turn where this 0-40, that our opponents can't remove is going to become a huge deal. Yes, we should expect our opponents to remove it, but it's done its job. Really, if you think about it, effectively dealing 27 damage to somebody, right? Flipping their life total from 40 to 13. And it kind of doesn't matter if somebody removes the Perdition because it's done its job. The nice thing is if there's any world where they can do it on our next turn, even if it's in response to attacking. Remember, we could sacrifice it to Felothar and just draw a ton of cards, as an option there. But I mean, if we untap and nothing's changed, I think we just keep getting we get the Architect out here and that. There could be another option to sack something like the Bedrock Tortoise just to draw some cards here instead. Just to refill our hand. I think that's the one thing that Felothar is so good at, and we have to remember, is that you can sacrifice your creatures to draw these cards. But remember, we could play the Architect, and then sack the wall that we just made with the Architect to draw 3, pitch 1, and go get a basic land, which feels like a great turn, right, as we're threatening with our other creatures. I feel like it's not a bad place to stop because we kind of demonstrated what we're trying to do, but I think it's important to kind of see how does the curve work, how we're setting things up, and how does it look when, of course, in the games where we don't have trample at our disposal. Here, getting into playtest number 2, we've got a 3-lander with Reanimate for, of course, getting our creatures back. Brave the Sands for the Vigilance, Seraph for that Death Touch, and Consuming Blob. So we're a little bit higher up on the mana scale this time, but we see Jaws of Defeat, probably one of the best cards from the precon for this deck. Whenever a creature we control enters, target opponent loses life equal to the difference between that creature's power and toughness. A great ability, making sure that we can hopefully start doling some damage out. Here I just think we get down the Brave the Sands. I think we're just going to use these first few turns just to start getting things down. There's that Baitor for 5 mana. So we're working our way there. Unfortunately, just not much to do here on turn 3. So we've kind of got to let it ride. Turn 4, I think the answer is still Felothar. Get it in, get it set up. Hopefully we can go for something like Baitor next turn. but we don't even mind, going for McCready if we had to, or Jaws of Defeat if we have to, right? I guess there is a world where if the game's going slow, you could Jaws of Defeat and then Felothar, but it would feel awkward if we hit a land next turn and we're just wasting mana. And we did hit it, so I think it's Baitor here. At the end step, we're going to draw a card because there's going to be 10 or greater. So Felothar could attack, right? And we're going to get that card draw because we're at 10. Now our goal, right, is to get up to 40, right, for its big line ability. 6 mana here. Sereth could get us up to 16. The Blob's not going to get us very much higher. We could Sereth plus McCready. It would give Felothar Skulk, which would be nice, right? Potentially letting it hit even harder. They have Vigilance, so that's nice. They're going to stay on tap because of it, giving them Hexproof, right? So they have Hexproof, basically, and Vigilance. Now, they're not going to get Death Touch, right, because they don't tap because they Brave the Sands. But I think that's fine. We still take the attacks, but Baitor's in the air, so it has a higher chance of dealing damage to our opponents. And now we're at 19. So we're getting really close to that 20 threshold, but we get to draw. And then this turn, the Blob feels odd, right? So do we do something like Nature's Lore to feed our graveyard just to get something in there? That way when this consuming Blob comes down. Or we could sack something like McCready to draw a couple cards. Again, I like the Skulk, but right, so many of our creatures in this scenario are going to be higher than that. Do we do something like sacking the McCready to draw 3? Pitch 1, we know we have the Blob, so it might even be worth doing like pitching something like our land, right? Since we know it's going to be in there. That's 5 mana, so we got 3 mana left. We could do something like Doran, get it in, right? And now we're at 21, so at the end of turn, right, we would draw a card and untap each creature we control. And now we just want to work our way to 40, probably by playing the Adherent. Maybe we sack something like Doran, draw some more cards again, try to feed into more of our creatures. The nice thing is Baitor's 7 in the air, so it's going to be threatening. Felothar is going to be threatening. Sereth is going to be threatening. I guess the only downside is Brave the Sands, right? Giving them Vigilance so they can't get that Death Touch. But I think this is one of those scenarios where it's just kind of the unfortunate scenario where they're out at the same time. A lot of the games, we're probably not going to see them both at the same time. And in fact, if this was Orin Frostfang, it would be even better, right? But I think we have to remember that in the back of our head that at times you're going to see cards at the wrong time. I think this next turn, it's just what? Jaws of the Defeat, the Adherent, right? Get some life in. Now we have that flawless maneuver up to protect the board. Just try to get ourselves up to that 40 toughness and have some fun. But let's get into our third playtest. Again, we got most of the way there, right? The problem with, of course, gold fishing is everything comes down to what your opponents have, and we can't really simulate that. So I think past a certain point, there's only so much we can do. Here we're keeping a 4-land with Reanimate, Meekstone, and then Balden. Balden's great for 6 mana. Here we're getting a little bit awkward of a land draw. So we probably want something like Deathcap Glade tapped in turn 1. My thought is Hushwood Verge and Nature's Lore here on turn 2. Go ahead and get our Triumph. This will mean a turn 3. As it's looking at, this is a turn 3 Felothar, which is great, right? Allows her to start attacking next turn. Now we're at 5 mana. I could Meekstone plus the Adhere plus the Architect. Where the Meekstone is going to help our opponents have to really start deciding, are they going to attack, right, and risk not being able to untap. That is a 1/3 wall. I'm not sure why it's not generating there under the token pool, but that's okay. Felothar can attack this turn, and again, we don't have to worry because it's going to untap. The Architect won't, so we do have to be a little careful of that. I don't think we know. Now turn 6, we get the option. Do you Balden or do you Angel of Destiny? What I like about going Balden here is remember that Balden has to attack in order to give that buff. Right? But Angel of Destiny at the same time could be really useful in our next turn. I can't draw and play either of them, right? Like I could sack the Architect, to draw and then reanimate it back, but that doesn't make much sense. I could sack the wall and just see what we run into. The problem is unless we run into something for 3 mana, it feels like a really awkward turn. I think I'd be more willing to do something like Angel of Destiny and attack. The nice thing is it actually is going to gain me life with Felothar attacking, right? And then hopefully get me towards that 15 life more than my starting life total, where that Angel of Destiny could then, right, attack next turn. I think I'd be willing to run that wall in as well. If it dies, we get the basic land. If not, right, no worries. Because now we come back to our turn. Now Angel of Destiny's turned on. This is a 6/6 double striker, right? Because of Felothar. If somebody removes Felothar, you just dump in Balden here. And now this can still do the same thing. I still feel like Balden's my choice either way here. Attack with Angel of Destiny, and if the person we're attacking doesn't have a flyer, and we attack with the Architect, we attack with Felothar, and we attack with that wall, there's a huge reality that we'd probably just knock somebody out of the game this turn with Angel of Destiny. And that's exactly what we want. That's the point of Angel of Destiny, right? Get in, knock people out. And then the other two are now left dealing with what's left, especially when we start gaining more life. Because if you think about that, 6, 12, 16, 21, 24 life gained off these 4 creatures, whether their damage connects to somebody or not. It's only if they deal to a player. So I apologize. We would have to make sure it deals to a player. But again, we could potentially, make that easier versus harder depending on who we're attacking. But either way, Angel of Destiny is probably having a good chance to get in the air against some decks, really making sure we take them out and work our way towards it. And then we still have the option to, sacrifice something like one of them, like the wall or Balden, and reanimate it back. And there's still the options with this reanimate sitting in hand to sack a creature to draw and then get it back, right? And the nice part about Meekstone is this gets to untap because it's under 3. The Architect won't, which is kind of an operating risk here, but I don't think we mind that. The other nice thing with that Reliquary Tower is Balden kind of seems like a nice thing to sack. Draw the 7, reanimate it back, and now you've just netted, right, 7 cards in your hand. Let's rock through one more playtest. Goal is to get these videos up to 30 minutes, and we've got a little bit of time left, so let's do it. Keep an eye, 3-lander here with Farseek for some ramp, that Ramasekor, Treebeard, one we didn't talk about in the presentation, a 0/5 with Trample and War 2. Whenever it enters, we make food, and whenever you gain life, you put that many counters on target Halfling or Tree Folk. So again, you can really grow Treebeard. Not a bad start. We draw the Citadel there, which feels like a perfect turn 1 play since something had to come in tapped. Turn 2, I think it's the Verge. It's either the Verge or the basic plains, or the basic forest. I'm going after the Farseek. Because that can allow me to go get my my thought here is to go get the Triumph, and again look towards a turn 3 Felothar. Yeah, there's other things to come down as well, but I think getting Felothar down makes sense. Because I think either way it makes sense to play the forest and play Felothar. Because now we're coming back on turn 4. We have to get one of these tap lands in, so we might as well do it. So now we have 4 mana left. We could go towards something like Garruk's Uprising to give Felothar Trample. We could go something like Treebeard to make those couple foods and just set ourselves up for more attacks next turn. Felothar can still attack this turn. 6 mana, just 1 away from, 6 mana. We do have enough for this Ikra Shadiki, right? Now, if we can manage to hit a player with either of them, and Treebeard probably will, right? Because it's a 5/5 right now with Trample, then we can gain life and go to its toughness, and it can put counters on itself, right? Making it bigger. And now we got this nice clump of creatures that are getting started. We have this protection with Flare of Fortitude. I think we'd happily give up Treebeard to protect the other 2, right? If need be. Because it's sacrificing a non-token white creature. We can't just put this Rammus down and sack that wall. But now, as we came back to our turn, Garruk Uprising for the Trample, Treebeard actually might be at those counter level to draw us a card on this Garruk's Uprising when it comes in. And then, 2 mana left, Wall of Blossoms, draw a card. Take the attacks this turn. They have Trample, which means they're hitting for sure, gaining us life. The Treebeard could get huge, right? Like there's a lot of worlds now where this game just takes off for us. and leads us to big damage, and the life to keep us alive in case somebody wipes the board. But I'd love to know, what do you think of Felothar down in the comment section below. I love this. I love the idea of this deck and what it's trying to do. I think it's a fun new abs, an idea that isn't just counters. And believe me, we'll talk about our fair share of counters commanders, especially with the main set Felothar. But let me know what you think of this one, and I will catch y'all